It's over $33 million that the Quebec government collected to those people. Do you think they find it funny when they find out that the premier was ready to sign for his buddies to drink more wine on a Friday afternoon to give them a permission that you, as a simple citizen, were not allowed?
Quebec once again finds itself embroiled in significant scandals. Recently, a Quebec politician, Pascal Bérubé, a member of the National Assembly for the Parti québécois, drew attention after appearing on a podcast titled Politiquement Parlant, where he recounted a shocking incident that occurred during the lockdown in February 2021.
Quand il y a eu des moments plus durs pendant la pandémie, on se parlait beaucoup. Je me souviens, moi, d'un vendredi après-midi en pleine pandémie, où je suis au centre-ville de Montréal, puis je le texte. Il n'y a personne à son bureau du premier ministre. Il dit, qu'est-ce que tu fais? Il dit, débarque à mon bureau, j'arrive avec une bouteille de vin. Alors, on a passé un après-midi à parler de politique, juste nous deux. Il n'y a jamais personne qui va savoir ce qu'on s'est dit.
Mais non, mais c'est génial. Moi, j'adore ce genre
d'histoire. Il y a une tempête de neige. Il n'y a personne, là. Il y a les gardes du corps. Je suis dans son bureau. Je me souviens parce qu'il y avait une manifestation, il y avait du popcorn de la terre, rentrer du popcorn. Et là, on a passé l'après-midi. Puis après, j'ai dit, ben là, il faut que je m'en aille chez nous parce que t'as mis un couvre-feu? Il me dit, je te signe un papier. Non. Alors...
This revelation is deeply troubling, isn't it? Our politicians seem to believe they are above the rules they impose on the rest of us. As our Quebec politicians laugh at this situation, other politicians have lost their credibility for similar actions. Boris Johnson, former UK Prime Minister, was at the center of the Partygate scandal that partially led to his downfall. And Alberta former Premier Jason Kenney faced public repercussions after violating COVID-19 public health rules at a dinner. Additionally, Ontario Premier Doug Ford was criticized for visiting his cottage despite making a plea for people not to travel out of major urban centers. Now we have the Premier of Quebec sipping wine with a member of another political party in his office in the midst of a lockdown and offering curfew exemption to his friend. Yet there was almost no media attention brought to this story. As a company, we have received more than a dozen fines for our underground reporting. The Montreal police even raided the boat we rented to cover the Montreal lockdown and provide accommodation for our colleagues. You can watch our documentary at raid.movie. Additionally, at Ribbon News, we have supported hundreds of Québécois who received curfew ticket. But unlike them, they did not receive an exemption offer from Premier Legault. Quebec recently revealed its worst deficit in history on March 12th, totaling $11 billion. How can we continue to trust a government that seems to lack concern for the well-being of its citizens? To delve deeper into this burning question, I invite you to listen to Éric Duhaime, the leader of the Conservative Party of Quebec.
Okay, what happened, it was like, Pascal Bérubé went and did a podcast last week, and he's admitting openly that he was on a Friday afternoon in Montreal bored, that he's a very good friend of the former Parti québécois minister, now CAQ Premier of Quebec, François Legault. They're chummy. He's texting him, oh, what are you doing? I'm bored. There's nothing to do. There's a lockdown right now in Quebec. So the premier said, why don't you come over at my office? Let's bring some wine and let's have fun together on Friday afternoon. So he showed up. They drank the bottle of wine, 1 or 2 or 3, we don't know. And he said that they got a very good conversation. They were having fun. He said that at one point he had to leave because at 8 p.m. it's the curfew that was imposed. And the premier said, oh, no problem. I can sign you a permission and you don't need to respect the curfew. And it ended up supposedly that the MNA left even before 8 p.m. because he said, no, I don't want to have that privilege. And he left. There's several questions on that. First off, people who are listening are thinking, okay, I was stuck in my house. I couldn't see my parents dying in a senior's house. My kids couldn't practice their sport. My business was shut down and I lost tons of money. And those guys were having fun drinking wine and saying the curfew is good for the others, not for us. A lot of people are shocked. Even worse than that, in Quebec, there was over 50,000 people who got tickets because they were not respecting the rules. 22,000 of those 50,000 was because they didn't respect the curfew. They got tickets of $1,500 each. It's over $33 million that the Quebec government collected to those people. Do you think they find it funny when they find out that the premier was ready to sign for his buddies to drink more wine on a Friday afternoon to give them a permission that you as a simple citizen were not allowed? This is un-Québécois, it's un-Canadian. We have the opportunity and the luck to live in a country where everyone's equal, no matter your economic or social status. And seeing that kind of class, like there's a superior class that could decide what's good for them doesn't apply to us. This is un-Québécois, it's un-Canadian, and it's a shame. And I hope that there's going to be more investigation and the media is going to start to cover that scandal, because one MNA from the CAQ had to resign during the crisis. He left the caucus of the CAQ because he was not respecting the rules. We all know that in the UK, Boris Johnson was forced to resign because he organized a party in his house. How come the Premier of Quebec did that and there's going to be no consequence? I don't believe it. I think there needs to be more investigation based on the information that the Parti Québécois MNA gave us in his podcast this week.
Mr. Legault is among a lot of scandal, and one of them is the budget that just been released. You were for hours to look at the document. Can you tell us a little bit about the $11 billion of deficit?
Yes, today I was at the lockup. I spent the whole day at the lockup of the Quebec government. The huge news out of the Quebec budget is that we're going to have the highest historic deficit in Quebec's history. $11 billion. It's just insane. Just to give us an idea, it represents if you wanted to balance the budget, they would have to increase the provincial sales tax by 4%, not to spend more, not to make surpluses, just to balance the books. That's what it represents. We're pushing on the back of the next generation an increase of 4% of the provincial sales tax. That's exactly what the CAQ is doing right now.
1,5% du PIB, je pense que c'est quelque chose de raisonnable. Je pense qu'il faut tenir compte du fait qu'il y a un ralentissement économique, qu'il y a une situation spéciale chez Hydro-Québec à cause des niveaux d'eau qui nous fait perdre 1 milliard. Je suis fier des choix qu'on a faits. Investissement en santé et en éducation, puis remettre de l'argent dans le portefeuille des Québécois, ça devait être fait. Puis là, maintenant, on a un déficit de 1,5% du PIB, puis progressivement, d'ici 5 ans, on va le résorber.
They're doing even worse than that. They're already planning that we're going to have a 10 years period of time under their leadership that we're going to be under deficit in Quebec. That goes against their own bill, anti-deficit bill. There's the increase of the spendings in Quebec is 2 times bigger than the increase of the revenues that are coming in. So they're spending, more and more and more, 4.6% more this year, while the increase of their income is only 2.4%. And worse than that, all their projections were wrong. They told us that inflation wouldn't be a problem. They told us that there would be a drop of interest rates. They told us that we wouldn't be in a recession. They told us that the unions would agree a new collective convention as they were proposing. They also said even that the deficit last year would be $4 billion. All those projections were wrong. The deficit ended up being $6.3 billion. They had to double down the increase of income they gave to their employees. We are technically already in a recession in Quebec after 2 semesters in red. The interest rates did not go down, and inflation is a huge problem for all families who are trying to, afford the same lifestyle as they used to have. So it shows that this government is out of control. The spending is out of control. This finance minister, Éric Duhaime, who's a former candidate for the federal Conservatives under Stephen Harper's leadership, is now not a conservative anymore. He's more of a solidaire or a péquiste because he is completely out of line. He's presenting the worst deficit in red in Quebec's history, and that's very shameful. Well, I think it's purely incompetence. It's a government that's trying to please everybody except the future generations and taxpayers. People are struggling to make both ends meet these days. Everything is increasing. There's a huge struggle for taxpayers, and instead of giving them a break, try to downsize the state. The government decided that they're just going to put more on their back, and that's what's painful. It's people cannot afford the same lifestyle as they used to in Quebec right now, and it's going to get even worse under the CAQ's leadership. And what is very disappointing on top of that is that we have a government that promised the exact opposite when they were in opposition. And since they've been in power, it's been a nightmare. It's not a government that is thinking about downsizing the state, obviously. They don't want to have any interest groups against them. They want to attack the taxpayers, and that's unfortunately what they've done today. And you're right, they're subsidizing left and right, including the media, and it's a disgrace.
Don't forget to go over raid.movie to watch our exclusive documentary on what happened with the Montreal police when our team went to Montreal to report on the lockdown. The Montreal police raided our boat. You don't want to miss that, so go over raid.movie right now.